You're listening to Montreal Now on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie of the Montreal Gazette. James, I'm sorry for all the confusion. I was just taken aback by the emotion that Ita Yudin of CJAD conveyed following last night's incidents at the Jewish Community Center. Something's really happening.
Well, it is. You could understand it, and you can understand. It's like I understand that that people can have a point of view about Palestine, can have a point of view of what's happening in Israel right now and in Gaza. Okay, but there's a difference. There is a difference. I'm very sorry. And if you get up in people's faces, and that's what we saw last night happening with the cops. And I'm sorry. It was always. You could scream and shout. I remember I was back in 2012. I made a large fortune in overtime covering the Maple Spring. And, that was the idea. You can keep groups apart, you can keep groups penned up, but you cross over a line, and that's it. And it seems that there is a deliberate desire on the part of some individuals who are showing up at these protests to cross that line. And I think it's only a matter of time until something bad happens, and I wish everybody would just smarten the hell up.
Why do you think the police and the city isn't showing more teeth on this?
It really depends on it's cause and response. So if somebody is, my understanding is 2 people got picked up for assault, which could mean anything, as you know, and they signed a promise to appear, and they were cut loose. Do they hesitate, or do you think is there a suggestion that they're giving people free rein? I would disagree with that. From the images, I wasn't there, but from the images that I saw, the main thing is my understanding for when a deployment is being done by the cops, it's not called crowd control for nothing. The idea is to keep things from going south, from getting completely out of hand. So you're trying, on the one hand, to keep the lid on a simmering pot, keep your eyes in 5 places or 10 places or 12 places at once, and hope that nobody does something stupid, like really stupid. And that seems to have been the issue right now. But once again, this is intimidation, it's bullying, and I don't think there's any place for it in Montreal.
All right, moving on. Paul Saint-Pierre Marondon seems to be very effectively getting under Legault's skin.
Well, as I say, if there was a Nobel Prize for doing that, he would be on the short list. What's really great is, the whole set-to between Quebec City and Ottawa over the issue of immigration. Although I understand now that was all a silly misunderstanding, apparently, David. And the letter seems to have been oddly written. And oh my goodness, this is just terrible. But here's the fun part: Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, seeing an opening, takes the puck on a breakaway, and he suggests to Francois Legault that, and I have, with all due respect to Jason Mayoff of our newscaster, it wasn't his suggestion. It wasn't Saint-Pierre Plamondon's suggestion that a referendum be held on repatriating the powers of immigration. It was Francois Legault who made that suggestion during the last campaign, who has since distanced himself from that, but never one to let an opportunity slide. Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon turned around and says, listen, this would be a good idea for you to revive that idea because you're having so many problems. And by the way, here's how you could phrase the question. No more than that, and no more than that was necessary. It was just enough, to give the old poke in the shoulder to his political adversary, his political nemesis. And I gotta tell you, he's got this figured out. He's having fun with it. And as far as Francois Legault with his his enunciations during campaigns about holding referendums on taking powers from Ottawa, couldn't happen to a nicer guy. So we better get used to it. But clearly, there's at least one person out there, the head of the PQ, who's done his homework on Francois Legault, and Francois Legault better keep looking over his shoulder especially now with a budget coming up, various policy announcements to make or policy positions to be reaffirmed. Make sure you got your facts right there, Mr. Premier, because it seems you've got a guy looking over your shoulder, and every time he does that, I'm pretty sure he goes up 3 or 4 points in the polls.
And a big week next week for the Premier. Budget on Tuesday, and then a meeting with the Prime Minister on the 15th.
Yeah, it's really something. Let me ask you straight up. You've been there, you've done that. Wouldn't you be a little nervous if your staff decided to schedule an important meeting for you on the Ides of March?
Yes, I would. I would be very concerned of such a meeting.
I'm funny, but some people are, I'm not superstitious,
No.
but you would think if you have any sense of history, certainly political history, certainly Roman history, that March 15th was a very unlucky day for Julius Caesar, who had a very important meeting at the Senate in Rome and wound up
Exactly.
stabbed more than 40 times.
Yeah, it's like a Friday the 13th for politicians.
Well, you'd think. You know what I mean? But this is it. But what I find interesting as well is the timing of this. It's 2 days after the provincial budget.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, he's going to have to, Monsieur Legault is going to have to be careful about what he says or what he does or what he promises or how much money he hands out, if any at all. Because Trudeau didn't mince words the last time, right? Remember when they were looking for more money to handle immigration, as I recall. Trudeau turned around and says, well, maybe if you were busy cutting $400 checks in exchange for votes, you'd have a little more cash on hand. So I find that timing very interesting. But once again, this idea that, our immigration minister, Madame Fachette, is saying, oh, no, it was just a silly misunderstanding, suggests that something may be afoot. Maybe Francois Legault is discovering that he can't afford to have that many more in the way of enemies, even though he's made a pretty good career of trying to identify them. Maybe he figures I can't really have a two-front war with Ottawa and the opposition at the same time. So we'll see what happens. But I just find it very, very interesting.
I don't see the upside. I don't see the upside. 2 points here, James. I don't see the upside for either politicians. And why not have the ministers meet first?
Well, I think Francois Legault needs to try and reestablish some equilibrium poll-wise in terms of being the premier of Quebec, having, as I like to say, having, two-nation talks together about immigration.
Uh-huh.
And Justin Trudeau,
yeah.
I think, needs the PR as well. He needs to be seen to be making nice with Quebec. He's in trouble here.
Mm-hmm.
It's not theoretical anymore.
No doubt.
He's being beaten by Pierre Poilievre in freaking Quebec. So he better start, getting to work. And if it wasn't his idea, it was probably that, the chippy little staffer who said, yeah, and not just that, Prime Minister, you're going to be meeting with him on the 15th of March, So I think it's all sort of like gelling together. But these are two guys who are desperate for a win, a visible win. And I think they're hoping that the 15th of March, the 15th of March will contain that.
Yeah, I think what it tells me, at least for Legault, is that his budget is going to be awful, because usually the week of a budget speech, you aren't talking about anything else than your budget. You're barnstorming about your budget. And to put that meeting on the 3 days after, to me, says that this budget is going to be ugly.
David, we don't discuss this every day, although even though it seems to be in back of mind every time you and I talk, okay? Yeah. But let's face it, the house is on fire. Yeah. For Francois Legault, okay? Yeah. Yeah. The house is on fire for Legault. The Quebec Liberals are in the same fire, but they have no idea how to use a fire extinguisher, okay? The Quebec Solidaire seems lost in the smoke, and James is standing outside watching the smoke come out of the windows, wondering who's going to come out first, if anyone. So that's where we are. We are in a situation of not so very apprehended a crisis at the National Assembly. And given the chaotic, illegal, and insulting legislative agenda of the Coalition Avenir Québec, and given what is passing for normal in these parts in terms of a legislative agenda, it's going to be very interesting to see just how ugly this is going to get, and I believe it will get a lot uglier before it's done. But I think a lot of things we've taken for granted, whether it's the bulletproof Francois Legault, the dumb, stupid, lucky Justin Trudeau, the fact that nothing is going to change. We're in gridlock with the CAQ, the way we were in gridlock with the PQ and the Liberals. I think that is about to be blown up the airlock entirely.
Thank you, James.
Do this again tomorrow at the Met.